This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Housing alone will never solve homelessness, but community will. This is John Calloway, the Executive Director of Mission Waco. Welcome to It Takes a Village with Creekside Community Village, where we will discuss Mission Waco's newest project, Creekside Community Village, the most talked about neighborhood in Waco. This transformational development combines permanent supportive housing with life-giving community engagement. I hope you'll join us along this journey as we hear from stakeholders involved in helping make this dream a reality. All right, well, let's jump in. So welcome to episode 2 of It Takes a Village with Creekside Community Village. Here with me today, I've got Kelly, who is the youth director for New Canaan Church out of Connecticut. Did I say that right?
The Congregational Church of New Canaan.
It's
yes.
A long title.
It's a long title.
It's like Mission Waco, Mission World. It's a mouthful. But also have Penelope, Reese, and Dylan. This is a really fun episode because there's not too many. Well, one, Mission Waco, we don't have this size of groups come in. I think there's 127 people that have come, which is that's a huge group. We don't have that very often, and I think it's also unique. This particular church got it in their brain that they wanted to help out with Creekside Community Village, and so they had committed to purchase 3 homes at $50,000 a piece, which is just. It blows my mind that there's a church that's not even in our city that's bought into this project at this level. So thank you. I want to make sure everybody gets introduced, and then I've got a few questions I want to run through. And so let's start with you, Kelly. How long have you been at the church? What's your role? And what drew you to Waco? Like, how did this connection really happen?
Sure. So my name is Kelly Antonson. I am the Senior Youth Director at the Congregational Church of New Canaan. I always say that I have the greatest job in the world because I get to see how our youth come to know their faith and the love of God and get to live that out through service and opportunities like Mission Waco provides for education. And so with a large group, we're limited in the number of nonprofits who will be willing to take us on. And so we're grateful, thank you, to you, John, and your staff for your willingness to partner with us. And so that's a big piece of it. But really, I just was talking to some of my church members and said, has anyone heard of a great organization? And they said, let me ask a friend in Texas where their large youth group goes. And that's how it happened, very small connection.
Yeah.
And then I reached out and spoke with Kathy and Libby, and we're so impressed by our phone conversations, and we just felt like the Spirit was moving. And I went on your website, I saw about the tiny home project in Creekside Village, and we do a lot of work with our youth in trying to educate them on the root causes of homelessness and how to break down the stereotypes surrounding homelessness. And how that's what Christ would call us to do. And so it just really aligned, your mission aligns with ours, and we just felt like it could be a really great way for us to accomplish some both mutual missions. And so then it just kind of happened. So.
And so y'all had a group that came down, I think last year, to kind of visit and kind of check us out.
Yes, so myself and 2 of my colleagues, Allison and Mariana, came down to do a site visit and kind of see the scope of who you are and your footprint here. And we were fortunate to go out to Creekside to see the land, and Dusty showed us the model homes. Then we just started planning from there and asked what the cost would be. And our congregation is one that really loves to know how they're investing in a project, and this just really felt like something that we could get on board with.
So what are some of the other places you've gone to since you've been at the church?
Sure. All over. We have a really strong partnership with Blueprint Ministries in San Antonio, Texas. They're a longtime partner of ours. We in the past have worked with Raise the Roof in Mobile, Alabama. They've since shut down since COVID, but really, we've gone to Sacramento, California in the past few years. We were in Puerto Rico last year, all over the U.S. And our focus is, when I first started looking for a mission partner, we want to know that the work that we're coming in to do will continue once we're gone. We are not Jesus Christ. We are coming to do Christ's work. And we want to be on board with those who want to continue to fulfill that mission.
Yeah, and one of the things I love and what I've come to love about your students and the leaders that you've had is that it fits Mission Waco so well in the sense that we're all about relationships. And when you look at the successful stories of life transformation, it's taken decades. And so when you follow Jimmy Doral around, who's our founder, you ask him what success looks like, he points to people. He doesn't point to the buildings, he points to people. And I think that's, it continues to impress me. We have board members that have come through our programming. So they're my bosses. They were in our after-school children's program 20 years ago. And that's what we hope to see with, we have a lot of staff members who have come through our programming. And so that's how God has worked over the years, is through relationships. But God has certainly used short-term trips to have long-term impact. Because I think short-term trips in and of themselves tend to not do that much good, let's be honest. But when it's plugged into long-term relationship or long-term impact, that's what can happen, is you can be a huge building block. I mean, you'll be able to come back one day and point to the 3 homes that you built as a teenager one random week in February when it's 18 degrees outside. I hope you have good memories from this week, despite the cold. For Texas, it's weird. So let's move on. Penelope, tell us about who you are, what grade you're in, anything else, how long you've been a part of the church, what's been exciting about, or what you've loved about the trip.
Yeah. So I'm a senior in high school, we all are. And I've been at the church since 3rd grade.
Oh, wow.
So a long time. I kind of grew up in the church, and it's been really special. And yeah, it's just been such a transformative experience, especially I think the church's youth program is just beyond, like, there's nothing like it. So I think just these trips have been so transformative for my faith journey. And really just a secure, like, foundation, I would say. And I think just in terms of Mission Waco, I think this is our 4th trip. As Kelly was saying, to, like, Puerto Rico last year and San Antonio. I would say Mission Waco really has done the best job of allowing us to fully, like, understand and learn the complexities of homelessness and poverty, not just in Waco, but all over the world. And I think that has been truly special. I think other companies kind of just put us to work, for lack of better words. But I think Mission Waco has done a really good job of just teaching us and making us understand just the complexities and what goes behind homelessness and poverty.
Well, and we've had y'all been working with a couple different groups. So Mission Waco, we've got Creekside and a number of things that the large group has helped with. We can't do this alone. It takes a village. And so we partner with other nonprofits around the city to address housing and homelessness, poverty in general. One of those is Grassroots, led by Mike Stone. And y'all been helping out with, I think some stuff around somebody's house, front porch, and some yard work. So that's amazing. What's impressed you about Mission Waco since you've been here? You briefly mentioned that it was more than just getting to work and doing stuff. What was it about the education that you loved? I know you went on a big tour yesterday.
Yeah. I think, Libya's done such an amazing job with just playing a role in that teaching and understanding. I think the other day we played, like, a board game about homelessness and, like, what it's like to actually be.
Do you remember the name of the game?
No.
Anybody?
Surviving the streets.
Surviving the streets.
Surviving the streets, yeah. So just stuff like that, Surviving the Streets, this documentary that we watched yesterday, the fair trade market, just really being able to kind of experience that and, like, truly understanding what it's like to live in poverty in Waco and around the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things we all know is that most of us, we sit and it's cognitive learning, right? We sit in a classroom.
Exactly.
Somebody talks to us. When you're trying to understand the complexity, as you mentioned, of homelessness and poverty, you need much more of an immersive experience. Now, one thing y'all were not able to participate in is what we call our poverty simulation, which is one of the best ways to understand poverty, because you're at a very, albeit surface level, you're kind of living it, but surviving the streets, like trying to create educational and creative ways to address poverty really does help people understand what's going on. A quick plug for any of our listeners, we can do Surviving the Streets game for your staff, for your business. I think the last time we did it, Libby Barnhill, who's our director of our groups, did this game with Waco Housing Authority, which is interesting. And so we would love to come to your Sunday school class, your small group, your business, and do this Surviving the Streets game, because it's a fun and I think realistic way to sort of understand the complexities of poverty. So thank you, Penelope. Reese, tell us a little bit about you and your experience here.
I'm also a senior. I joined the Congregational church, I believe, during COVID. We left our old church just because we thought we needed a change, and we kind of like gone into a slump. And my sisters and I, we all just kind of fell in love with our Reverend Chapin and everything that the youth group has to offer. I think Kelly's just done such an incredible job creating this community, like just knitted together through a share of faith. And then I've just found such a purpose with the Congregational church. It's just become the place where I'm happiest, and I'm so grateful to have that church in my community. And this is only my second mission trip, because my first 2 years of high school, I was playing a winter sport, so I could never go. And I saw all my friends and my sister go on the trip and just come back truly just with so much more faith and such a greater connection to God, and just so much happier. And I was always so jealous that I couldn't go. And then I ended up going through an injury, and I can no longer play that sport anymore. And at the time, I was really devastated about that in my life. And being able to go on the mission trip was really the one silver lining I kind of saw in all of it. And now I tell people that I'm so grateful for that change that's happened to me, because I can't imagine not being on this trip. And I'm just feel blessed.
Well, that's an incredible perspective. I think for many of us, when we go through fairly trying times, it can leave us depressed, which I'm sure maybe that happened for you. But to pivot and to see a silver lining, I think is incredible. What are some of the things that you've done while you've been here this week, and what's kind of impressed you? What's a God sighting that you've experienced here?
Yeah, so we actually write these mission sponsor letters back to the people that funded this trip, and I keep mentioning this story in my letters. At Church Under the Bridge, I had the privilege of sitting next to this man named Lewis, and he was certainly in poverty, and he was kind of telling me a little bit about that. And then I remember he was just so happy to be there and chocked with so much grace and gratitude. And he would always like saying amen anytime someone said something that touched his heart. And I remember we were being served communion, and he couldn't get the little juice cup open. And he asked me to help him because his hands were so cold, because obviously it's a very cold week in Texas. And then he prayed for me, and he was just so thankful just for that little thing I did for him. And then he kept offering to do things for me. And like just that moment and that day kind of reminded me that while we're coming here to help the less fortunate, because we've been so blessed in our own lives, we're also being transformed ourselves, and they're really helping us. Like personally for me, I've just had such a deeper gratitude for my life and all the blessings that I've had this week. And the people I've met have also brought me to such a larger faith, just knowing that like all the trials and tribulations that they've been through, and they still have such a deep connection to God. Like, who am I to kind of have a lesser faith? And I think that's really put a lot of my life into perspective.
That's a great perspective. I think I often describe quote unquote mission trips. I was a missions pastor in Austin for 7 years before coming back to Waco. And it's like 7 years of discipleship in a week. It's amazing what God reveals to you when you leave your cell phone, you leave the distractions of sports and life and tests and just family and all those things. When you really separate yourself from all these distractions, it's like you find yourself in the center of God's will in a way that is hard to find during the normal day-to-day routines. And so I love hearing, especially students, but also adults too. I love hearing families' experiences when they come and they really do separate themselves and just really plug into serving others. I mean, there's a real like it says in Isaiah 58 or 5, there's when we give ourselves on behalf of the poor, it's our healing that comes. I think it's interesting that that's a natural side effect of giving yourselves on behalf of someone else. You see that in Philippians 2, where that's what it means to be Christ-like, is to defer to others, is to put others before your own needs. I'm sure, other than sports, you could be doing all kinds of things than being here, right? And we have lots of students that come here during the summer, and they could be on vacation. They could be doing a sports camp or any kind of camp, but they've chosen to be with their friends to serve others in another city, which I think is really, really neat. So, Reese, thank you. Dylan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, my name is Dylan Reese. I'm 18 years old, and I moved to New Canaan, Connecticut when I was 3 years old. My parents used to live in the city, and they brought my sister and I to Connecticut as a way to step away from kind of the bustle and the rush of the city and to raise.
So when you say the city.
Sorry, excuse me. I know. We're so used to saying, let's say this is New York City.
Okay, good.
Yes. So we went out to New Canaan as a way to step away from the rush there and to find kind of the community and the backbones that would my parents thought would raise our kids in a proper and the most educational setting.
Yeah.
And so I've been raised through the Congregational Church of New Canaan and have been a member since. And while at first I might not have understood it, I'm a bit too young to understand my faith, sticking with the church and my parents' emphasis on what it means to be in this sort of community has given me great appreciation of what now that looking back after going to college in this upcoming year, what this church has done for me and what my town has done for me. And the church is super, super special to me. And I think one of the things that makes it special is this emphasis on not just a Sunday morning service that a senior reverend would stand up and give a sermon. And it's more than that. It's a connection. Our amazing senior minister, Chapin Gardner, has found a way to touch every single person in the New Canaan Congregational Church community. And from the youngest person who walks in the door in the morning to the member who's been there for 50 years. He finds a way to connect, to keep up, and show just a genuine love to each member. And I feel like that's super special. And I've really been trying to find a way to implement that in my own life, to share my love and share what privileges I've been shown, from being raised in this amazing community to those around me.
Talk to me a little bit more about that. I think that oftentimes we go through life and we don't recognize our own privilege until we come in close contact with those who look, think, and act very different from us. How have these trips shaped your perspective on your privilege?
Like you said, these trips are certainly, in the best way to describe it, eye-opening. We come from such a privileged town, and it's done so much good for me, and all my neighbors and friends are, for the most part, really happy, and it's been an amazing place to be raised. But these trips have really shown me a side of the world that it's deeper than what we see at home. But it's, like I said before, it's eye-opening in that I think it's best to describe this with a little anecdote. Like Reese was telling a story from our service under the bridge, church under the bridge. And that morning, I was sitting a few rows behind the stage. There was a homeless individual who was sitting in front of me, and in front of him were more of our youth group. And I saw this individual in front of me participating throughout the service. And midway through, he offered his one blanket that he had brought with him to one of our youth group members. And throughout this week, I've just been thinking of that moment. And that's just something that I would have never seen unless I had come to a town like this and thinking about that, like what it meant for him to give up of what little he had to our community, to show his hospitality and to express his gratitude for our coming to Waco, is exposure that I would have never previously seen.
Man, that's fantastic. I love that story. I think that's one of the things we hope people who interact with our organization get to experience. The often describe, Jimmy and Janet, who were Baylor grads. They traveled the world. They worked with Mother Teresa, decided that God was calling them back to North Waco. And they didn't show up in the neighborhood to fix anything. They simply moved into the neighborhood to live with the people that God was calling them to serve. And so we're not an organization that, and I think you see this a lot, where we live on the outskirts of town and we drive to the poor part of the city and do work. The failing schools, those are my kids' failing schools. The potholes that don't get fixed, those are my potholes. We don't drive in and fix other people's problems. In fact, we don't assume that we even know what the problems and the needs really are until we've listened. And that's what Jimmy and Janet have modeled for us. What we continue to do is we live among the people God has called us to serve so that we can listen and learn so that we can love appropriately. And I think that learning piece is something we often miss when we try to help others, is that, man, God has got so much to teach us, not just about ourselves, but about how the world works and what our role, especially as a church, should be in this world. And I think that speaks to the culture of not just you all, but I think the church. So my next question, Kelly, is really to you. Talk to us about, I'm really intrigued and interested in the culture of y'all's church, because I think that so many of our people that are listening, we show up on Sunday, we go to a big event, and it's a big production, and there's lots of sound and lighting, maybe a little smoke on the stage, and it's this production, and we consume, and I think it's fairly unique that you've got a church like yours traveling halfway across the country to serve a little nonprofit in this old town called Waco, Texas. So talk to me a little bit about the culture of the church. Why is it that I'm just interested that y'all would just think about doing that, let alone give that financially substantial gift to follow what you're doing?
Sure. So, we are abundantly blessed that our church truly believes in the power of youth. And this youth group was founded over 30 years ago, and it started with, a smaller group of kids. And over time, the experience that the youth in our community had by serving, what you were speaking to earlier, really transformed their hearts, and they shared that good news, the good news of Christ's mission in the world with their peers. And then from there, the interest and the hope for our community to continue, our church community to continue to these trips just continue to grow. We too have a traditional Sunday morning service, and my students here just talked about how inspiring the sermons from our senior pastor are. And we are filled by the Spirit in those moments, and we try to reflect upon, as Dylan mentioned, all that we've been provided and how we might share that with the world. But I think what's unique about our church and our youth program, I've been working with this program since 2011. We call it YG Youth Group. Not that original, but and with YG is that so often we are told that the generation of these students sitting right next to me are the lost generation. We are told, they are told that they're too connected to their phones, or they're this or they're that, and I see the exact opposite in them. I see that they are filled with hope and promise, and that they are the church now. And that is something that our church has always believed. And that is why people want to join our community. It's because we believe in the power of our youth and their voices. And just like you were reflecting upon listening to the community that you're serving, when I think about my role, I think about listening to what their hopes are. And their hopes are to live out Micah 6:8, to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with their God. And so I see it as my personal mission, and the mission of our program is to do just that, is to provide them opportunities to do that. And so, yes, I understand that it probably seems a little crazy of a concept that we would put all these kids on a plane and bring them to a small town in Texas, but when we know that God's work is in a community, we want to be a part of that. And that is what we've seen in Mission Waco. And it's just been, it's truly been such a blessing to learn about all that there's the breadth of your program is so dynamic and so well thought out. And we're just excited, and we're hopeful that this is a long-term partnership, because it feels so good to be here with you all.
Well, thank you for saying that. I mean, the picture you painted is really beautiful. That's centered around community and how God changes a community through teenagers, but also from teenagers. And so when we think about one of the things I'm sure y'all have heard from us during this week is that we believe the single leading cause of homelessness is the profound catastrophic loss of family, which is why when you think about community, that housing alone will never solve homelessness for an individual, but community will. Mother Teresa, one of my favorite lines she talked about and said was that the most devastating form of poverty is loneliness. Over and over and over again, research shows when you ask folks who are experiencing homelessness or poverty in general, what it is how would you define poverty, or how would you define homelessness? Middle class folks, if you ask them that question, they're going to say something about material loss. You don't have a roof over your head. You don't have the financial means to purchase food or groceries. It's material things. It's interesting, though, when you ask folks that are experiencing poverty or experiencing homelessness, they don't say those things. They talk about what it means to have shame, or what it means to not have relationship, or to not have a mother or a father or a brother or a sister. It's just an interesting, different dynamic. And I think that when we think through Creekside Community Village, we're thinking through that it's not just a bunch of homes. It is a bunch of homes, but it's not just a bunch of homes. It is community. Every front porch faces 6 other front porches. I think that in our mad rush to build suburban neighborhoods across the country, these master plan communities, that the back porches, they're back porches. They're not front porches. And I encourage anybody to, do the walk and don't wave principle. So walk over and shake a hand. I mean, how many of us don't know our neighbors? And people often talk about drug abuse, opioid addiction, and, how much of a challenge that may be for folks out in Creekside Community Village. I think it's less of a problem than what we see in suburban neighborhoods. I think the rate of loneliness is almost just as significant in rich neighborhoods. And so what we want to do with Creekside Community Village is something that I think your church has experienced, which is life-giving, genuine community. It's bringing high support. It's also bringing high challenge as well. And so I'm encouraged by your church. I want to go back down the line. What are your senior? So what else are you looking forward to? You're about to graduate. Do you have any plans? What's next for you?
I am going to college, not totally sure where yet, still unknown, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to starting the next chapter. And I think just in college, I'm really looking forward to finding the sense of community that I found at the church here. I think that'll be hard to do because this community at YG is so strong and so well built. So I really am looking forward to, seeking out that kind of community at school and even after I graduate school. Yeah.
Cool.
I do know where I'm going. I'm going to Richmond University. I'll be playing lacrosse there. And similar to Penelope, I'm definitely concerned with finding the connections that I've built here. I think it's something, we've mentioned this, but it's so special that we get to leave for a week and have no technology and no phones. And the connections that you build on these trips are profound. And I think it's something that's so special. I could talk about it for hours, but just the conversations that you have with people and the listening that goes on during these trips is so important, especially for children our age. And I just really hope that in my future I can recreate that kind of environment where you can just have such an open communication with the people you're around and just build those types of connections with all of my relationships to come.
It's good, Dylan.
So I'm blessed with the opportunity to attend Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee this upcoming year. It was my first choice of school, and I'm very happy to be going. While I am going to miss what the youth group has offered me, they stand with arms wide open to any and all alumni who would like to come back to the program and participate once more. This year, I believe we have 4 to 6 men and women who have been through the program and are now back once more to experience a little bit more of what, like, the students who maybe when they were a senior, they saw a freshman who was in that group. Now that they've graduated, they're coming back and seeing the same freshman now as a senior leader. And so it's a really cool form of reconnection that though you are going off to college, you always have a home back here in this program. And it shows just an immense amount of growth.
Yeah.
And you can reflect on the kid who you once talked to as a scared freshman who might have been a little nervous for their first trip, now as a leader and someone who is really making an impact of the program.
Well, I met a young lady named Katie at the work site where y'all are building 3 of our tiny homes. And she lives in the city. And I was just fascinated that, she took time, probably had to take PTO
Yes.
to come back on a trip like this to hang out with a bunch of teenagers. I think most adults wouldn't necessarily put that high on their priority list of what to take PTO for. And so I just think it's fascinating, and it absolutely speaks to the culture of the trip, right? Because if you're not having students have a good time, why would they want to come back after they've graduated and hang out and take time off work and away from family? So Kelly, talk to me a little bit about, one of the last questions, what's your hope for these seniors on a trip like this? Like, what would you like for them to experience? What is it that you would like them to carry forward from their experience in Waco, Texas?
Sure. It's every year, well, because I've been at the church for a while now, every year when our seniors start to graduate, I get really sad because I have watched the trajectory of their growth from young children to now young adults. And it's really just remarkable to have the privilege to witness that. And so for me, my hope is that they take what they've learned from their experiences in our youth group. They take what they've learned specifically this year from their experiences here in Waco, Creekside Village, for our youth to be able to start to. We really do work with our kids back home to understand the root causes of homelessness. This is something I used to previously work for one of our local, the largest provider of services to the homeless population in Connecticut. I used to work for them in fundraising. And what I started to realize during that time was all the things that you say, right? The loneliness, those are the things that the community is missing. And so what I started years ago was before our kids come on these trips, is we always focus on serving our local community as well. And what I hope they take back is that knowledge that we don't have to get on a plane and go and serve in a community far from our home. For us, for the youth and the program, it really works because it removes them from the daily stresses and daily life that sometimes can be overwhelming. But what they can do is take the knowledge that they've learned and go and live God's mission in the world. And we often talk about the Lord's Prayer and Thy kingdom come, Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And my hope is that our youth go forward and our seniors go forward with that as their personal mission, right? To build the kingdom of heaven here on earth. And I think that that's possible because they've seen it and experienced it on these short-term mission trips. And so they have a model for it. And then when they see an organization working with a city and really addressing the root causes of homelessness to be able to potentially house all of those who are unhoused in a community, then someday when they are leaders of corporations and and hold leadership positions in schools and whatever they might do, whether they're a social worker, they're going to enter all those experiences with a compassionate heart and an open mind. And that's really truly my prayer. That these experiences open their eyes to how they can use their futures for the betterment of our world, and for all our siblings in Christ to live in a way that they don't feel loneliness and they feel wholesome and cared for and unconditionally loved as children of God, as they all are.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that. It's beautiful. You know, I've got an 11 and 8-year-old, Cohen and Cora, and I might get emotional, but like when I think about how I want them to be as seniors, I think of you. I really do, and I mean that. They'll never be teenagers, I'm sure. But when they do become teenagers, I mean, I hope that they have a heart after God's will for their lives that is service to others. I hope that they're thinking the things that you're thinking and seeing the silver linings in an injury, are looking forward to going off to college and finding a community that's just as impactful, that raised them, that they can pour into, be loved by, and to love others within. And then always thinking about the blessing that God has given them, and being raised in such a place like Waco, Texas, that wherever God ends up landing them on their career path or in their just life, that they're thinking of others and thinking about their blessing that they've received, not to hoard or to keep among themselves, but to bless others. And so thank you for your example. And I really mean that. What's a challenge that you would give? I want each one of you to answer, starting with you, Kelly. Actually, we'll start with Dylan. We'll go back the other way.
All right.
What's a challenge that you would like to give our listeners, whether that be, love in your own backyard or go on a trip or, whatever it is? What's a challenge you think our listeners need to hear?
It's a very good question. And what this week has taught me is what you also emphasize is don't wave, shake a hand. I feel like what I've learned about being in Waco, Texas is while working on these homes and working on ramps for the elderly, it has helped me so much being able to put a face to the projects I'm working on. Being able to shake that hand, know I'm helping this person and their population. And it's really transformed the way I think about connection. It doesn't have to just be, I've been raised in an amazing town, and there's an entire rest of the United States, which I still have yet to discover, an entire world, which I've yet to discover. But someone needs to be the one to shake the hand. And so I will encourage everyone out there right now to shake a hand. Honestly, just if you don't know someone, if you're in a new place, be the first one. I don't think any regrets will come out of just stepping a little outside of your comfort zone and shaking a hand.
I love it, Dylan. Reese?
For me, I'd say that I feel like often, and I hope people listening would agree with this, but there's something that really touches your heart and kind of pulls on those strings. I think that's really God's calling and what he's urging you to do. And my challenge would just be to listen to that and to act upon it. I feel like often something touches us and then we kind of think about it and let it go and just kind of think that it would be too much out of our daily lives to actually do something about it. So my challenge would be to look into that more and really listen to what God's telling you, and have a blind faith in him and just follow that.
That's fantastic. I think that oftentimes when you do go on trips, for those who are listening, who have been on these kinds of mission trips or exposure trips, whatever you want to call them, and you interact with, you especially see this globally, but when you're in a place where you're interacting with folks that are very, very much in poverty, very low income, there is a sense that oftentimes we call it guilt, like for the privilege you do have. I don't think guilt is of God. I think guilt is actually of Satan. God works with conviction, not guilt. And so guilt puts you in a place of, I've got too much. But eventually you get over that. You go back home, you get back on the PlayStation, you drive the nice car, whatever it is. Conviction pivots your life. Conviction allows you to not just feel guilty about what you have or what you've been given, but it allows you to say, God's given me this so I can bless other people. How am I going to do this? And you see it over and over and over again in Scripture. It's like, how many times do our churches have sermon series on loving God, right? How many of those are about loving your neighbor? When you come on a trip like this, there's a level of conviction that happens that says, okay, well, why are we not talking about loving our neighbor? Why is that not in any of our sermon series? So thank you. Penelope?
Yeah, I think I can speak on behalf of almost all the mission fish that their faith
Hold on, what?
these
Did you say mission fish?
mission fish. Like
Explain
like,
that. What is that?
like just the kids who are on the trip, just the
We
high
call
school.
all
Mission
of
fit,
the,
okay.
so sorry, context. Our youth program, we call all of the youth in our program fish, and each youth group is identified by a particular fish logo and
Okay.
rooted in the Christian story of the fish and the significance of that to us. So our youngest youth group, which are our kindergartners and first graders, are called minnows.
Okay,
Guppies,
gotcha.
it continues from there.
Yeah.
And so when you're in YG, you're a mission fish.
Okay, I love it. Sorry, continue,
No,
please.
yeah.
I don't know.
So all the mission fish, their faith is at kind of an not all time, but just very, very high on these trips. And I think when you go home, there's kind of this like level of decline in your faith, just because you're at just such a high, such a peak on these trips. And I think that kind of just goes with the like a theme of transformation on these trips. But I think just a word of a challenge is that you're still the same person as you were. So as your faith kind of like dips, obviously your faith goes through mountains and valleys. And I think you're still the same person as like you always were. So I think these trips, yes, they transform you and they kind of open your eyes, as Dylan was saying. But you know, you're always has been the same person. So I think like your faith is still present after these trips. So I think just like continuing your faith and continuing practices, even after you get back home from these trips is really important. I really pay attention to just like how you felt during these trips and how God was calling you during these trips, and just keep doing that back at home.
Kelly, how would you challenge, you have a unique perspective working with teenagers full time. Challenge our parents. Or encourage both.
Sure.
Either one.
I would say, that a word of encouragement to parents, it's really hard. I mean, I have 3 very young children under the age of 4, and I worry and I pray for them, just like you were saying of your children, for their futures. And I would say it's so easy to lean into the worries of what will happen and how our children will become. But my challenge for parents is to model what it is they want for their children, right? And so if you want your children to be compassionate and empathetic and thoughtful people or Christians, then we have to live that out for
That's
our
good.
kids.
That's great. Yeah.
Right. And so that means that we have to model that for them, right? It's all about learning. And so there are moments as a parent where that's really hard to model that. It's challenging when you have to work full time and you have other ways that you need to provide for your children. But I think the best way that we can provide for the youth of today's world is by being exemplars of Christ's love in this world. And so that would be my challenge is, in those moments, and I find myself, I have to take my own advice so often, right? And I have to take that advice working with our youth. It's the greatest joy, but there are also moments where we're just trying to get through the basics and of the transitions of moment to moment. And we need to model Christ's love in those moments. And so I think that that would be the challenge that I would give to everybody listening.
That's great. Thank you. One of the I heard a story on Facebook, saw a story on Facebook, back when everybody was getting the stimulus checks, right? The end of COVID. COVID's still a thing, but whenever it's shutdowns and stuff. And there was a friend of mine whose daughter, when they got the stimulus check, especially I think maybe the second one, it was a little bit of a surprise. And they were talking about it as a family. And the daughter was like, we don't need this money. How are we going to give this away? And so they let the daughter and I think the two other kids decide where that whole check was going to go. They ended up giving it to Mission Waco. We were extremely thankful. But it was such a model of generosity that your kids are paying attention to what you're spending your money on, parents. And so how are you being generous if you want your kids to be generous people? Because it's not just about money. It's about loving others and being grateful for what you have. That's what all of us want for our children. But if you're not letting your children know, hey, we give here and here's why, and we're going to go serve, then how are they ever going to know about that? And so I think that you're an excellent model for how we should be as parents, but also what we want our kids to be. But for most of us, it's not just a trip. It is the discipleship that we raise our kids within over the course of their life. So thank y'all for being here. Thank you for taking time out of your, I thought my schedule was busy. Y'all are extremely busy this week. Thank you for coming all the way from Connecticut to be with us, to serve the people that God has called us to serve. You can find this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, but also you can find this, follow us on social media. We're launching Creekside Community Village on Instagram and Facebook, and you can find this podcast on our website and those places as well. Thank you to Congregational Church of New Canaan, did I get it right? Yes. For not just your presence here, but I can't emphasize enough the gratitude we have for the $150,000, $50,000 per home that y'all are providing, not just the financial support of, but also the building of these 3 homes. Means the world to us, and I think it's a challenge to all of us here in Waco that we've got. I believe we've got 23 homes committed, and our goal is 35. We're still raising money for our large welcome home center, our individual centralized bathrooms, and our community kitchen, and our convenience store and maintenance building as well. So we've got a lot of things still to raise money for. And y'all are both a sort of prophetic vision for our community of how generous we can be and how generous God has called us to be. So thank you, Kelly, Penelope, Reese, and Dylan for being with us today. And as you leave this place, I pray that God goes before you and is with you in your rear guard as you go. So thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you
right.
to your team.
Thank you for listening in. You can find us, Creekside Community Village, on Instagram, Facebook, and our website. Thanks. You can follow us on Creekside Community Village social handles and where you listen to your own podcasts.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.